Coach, Iowa versus Michigan, big game in the conference.
Big game.
This week. And Iowa last week against MTSU had more yards than ever under Kirk Ferentz while he's been at Iowa. So they certainly outman MTSU, but they're going to run the same plays against Michigan. Let's take a look at their offense.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons I've always admired Iowa. They know who they are, they recruit to it. And just a quick conversation about, this is older than the hills, as Tom Herman used to say, is that this is an I formation offset fullback. Fullbacks aren't around much longer. They are at Iowas of the world. So let's just go to the end zone and talk about what they look for when they recruit. All right, this is a zone lead play. And in zone football, you're always working with the next adjacent lineman to block 1-2. For example, the left guard, they're counting 1-2. These two have those two. These two are blocking all the way back. It's a lead play. The fullback is going to isolation on him. The only single block you have is on the center. Right. So everything else is a double team. Now, when you go recruit and their identity is I formation, you want to have big tailbacks. That's why in the Eddie Georges of the world, the big tailbacks are I tailbacks. Ohio State has J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins is not an I tailback. And when we had Carlos Hyde, we did some more I formation because you have to do what your personnel is able to do. So Iowa, they know who they are. They've recruited this. They've expanded a little bit, but they are a I formation football team. I formation football, you're going to see you're expected to get safeties down in there. Right. That's a recruit. Sargent's a big strong tailback. He's used to this. But the thought process is they're going to wear you out, pound you, and eventually this guy's going to eventually miss this tackle, and you're going to see Sargent break one.
So the question is against Michigan, where it's going to be more equal talent.
That's $1 million question.
Right. Everything stays the same. It's just.
But you look at Iowa's history. Iowa's history, and it's been very good. Iowa's history is that it won't be a high-scoring game. This could be one of those games that, Michigan State has had that, Wisconsin's had that philosophy. We're going to pound you, and then the third and fourth quarter, the toughest team wins, and Iowa takes great pride in their toughness. All right, Jerry, very similar play here. It's just a different look. Now it's from a shotgun, offset tailback. And the only reason teams would do this, there's probably a read element, even though they don't run a lot of. Nate Stanley's not a great read quarterback, but they want to give the appearance. You can't just throw the ball when the tailback's offset. Okay, this gives you a little more balance. This formation right here, it can be very easily a pass because your tailback's offset. It can very easily be a read, but make no mistake now, because this guy, they're not reading him. They're blocking him with a tight end. So this is just a little bit of a tendency breaker for them. I think there'll be more sets like this because they wanted a team like the Wolverines got a lot of talent on the defensive front.
This play is really interesting to me because I want you to explain why coaches always say when they're in the red zone, meaning the 20-yard line to the goal line, why do coaches always say we have to be able to run the ball in the red zone?
We would actually spend an inordinate amount of time in the red zone because I would call that the money dime. You're not paid to kick field goals, and that's kind of a mentality you have to have. The whole world changes once you cross the 20-yard line because there's no vertical stretch, and you have to, in my opinion, you have to run the football. And really, it's time tested because it's harder and harder. As the windows start to decrease, it's harder to throw the ball. For example, this corner right here has only about 20 yards of field to cover now, instead of 70 yards, 80 yards of field. So the chance of you getting a vertical push on him is almost none. The safeties don't have to back up about 3-4 yards. There's no vertical depth. So if you're going to throw the ball down here, the windows are very tight. You have a better chance for someone jumping an outcut or jumping an underneath pass because there's no vertical threat.